Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. One thing that I think is in high school coaching, you have some debate on is footwork. And starting out, and I think all of us as coaches, we start out teaching the things that we were taught as players. And so if I was taught stride stopper, always inside foot, always on the catch, moving one foot, stepping into it, I for years outlawed the hop and wouldn't, hey, the hop is slow hop. And then, you grow and you mature, you start watching people like you or you watch JJ Redick. I'm like, golly, he's doing both. But maybe I led you too much there. Where are you on the catch shooting, step or hop? Where are you kind of with players in that?
We spend a bunch of time on both. I'm getting away from even calling it a hop.
Yeah.
I call it a drop.
Okay.
And so one of the things that
I saw you put a video about that. You slowed a guy down, and as he caught it, I think it was Clay. As he caught it, you said drop in it. Yeah.
You watch him at his level. If this is his hip level and he's coming in this midway, and on that catch, he sinks, right? He doesn't come up because a hop considers us hopping, right? So he sinks. And so this is one of those things where in 2018, 19, Rob was teaching me the vertical drop. One of the things that he does with all the players in Miami is called a vertical drop. So he'll take a player, chest up, chin up, eyes up, right? And then you're standing straight up and down. And now we almost sink down into the floor, but we have to keep the same posture that we originally had. And what they teach guys to do there is no matter how they move on the floor, they move within that vertical drop. So when they're on the move, whether they're going into a catch and shoot scenario off a sprint, whatever have you, we're always in that most athletic position possible. And what you can start to do with that, I'm going on my high horse about a hop or on a drop because I've found it to be so valuable for players to get balanced while on the move. So we can drop, we start our movement. Okay, we recognize a catch and shoot opportunity. Maybe we're sprinting off of a handoff, or maybe we're sprinting into a catch and shoot. We can start to then implement that same drop on the catch where we catch with our front foot and then immediately bring that ball into what we call our one position and then drop to that level. And it centers us, man. It centers us in an incredible way in which running away from the basket, I haven't found a better way to balance yourself. Versus a 1-2 running away from the basket is really, really tough depending on the side. If you're a right-handed shooter and that right shoulder is already close to the rim, much easier. But if you're coming up that opposite side where that right shoulder has to swing, a la JJ Redick, who was amazing at it for some odd reason, that becomes really difficult. So I preach a lot of the drop. It gets players to the floor really quickly. And so long that kind of ties into how I teach the preparation side of things, starting to understand hands always before feet in terms of how our hands are being prepared and getting to position. So when that drop happens, our hands are already prepared, feet hit the floor. That's our sign for our eject button, and that ball's out of there. So I teach that a lot. And then I teach a lot of the 1-2 as well, especially if we're being chased. If you're coming around like a curl screen, something like that, you're going to implement the 1-2 being chased, or a lot of times coming behind the ball.
Off the bounce with the kind of more of a boom 1-2. It's still that 1-2, but the ability to stop on a dime, allow that defender to keep going, gain some separation. That's helpful.
Yeah, you need it all. It all. And it just comes to me, everything comes down to how we prepare our hands. And then if we can prepare our hands in a way that we can get them ready ahead of the feet, now we're playing a different game than everybody else.
Will you go a little bit deeper into that?
So everything stems from the ability to sequence correctly in terms of how we create energy. So the ball has to lead the way to get to that quote unquote two set point. We call it the 2. But that ball has to get to that 2 while the hips are still loaded in order to maximize our body's ability to create leverage, right? If our hands aren't ready off the move, especially off the dribble, what often tends to happen with shooters is their body starts to come up before the ball has a chance to lead the way. And now we're at a place where, well, our hands have to play catch up at the top of the shot. You see players oftentimes either release it super early so the ball juts out on a line drive, or they'll release late when they're almost releasing on the way down. And what being able to prepare the hands and moving kind of in a different way, what it does is, if we're always waiting on our feet because our hands are ahead of everything else, we're always able to sequence correctly. And if we're always able to sequence correctly, we're always able to create energy in a consistent way in which we're able to release that ball more so on the way up each time. And then it falls into, well, my hands are ready, so now I can connect. So now I'm connecting. So now there's no backwards movement. I'm now creating energy the way I need to. So all of that stuff starts to get really nerdy, but it's
I dig it. I even forgot that we were on a call together. I just started yeah, that's good.
It's it starts to become a lot of fun. I was like, for example, I was with a kid he plays for the Wizards the other day, and we were in the gym, and that's all we worked on was in terms of understanding this early preparation, which he had never done. And like halfway through it, he was like, this makes so much sense. He was like, it's never been this easy to shoot off the dribble. But it's a completely different way than, like we said, we often start out teaching what we were taught. I mean, it goes against everything you've been taught, right? It goes against everything so much, but it's the same way we want that shot to become a part of our body. When we start to shoot the ball off the dribble, that dribble now, we need to let that ball move with us as opposed to away from us. Our body can only cover the same amount of ground that it can cover, right? But if we can start to learn to let that ball move with us, it sets us up for the whole preparation piece, and life becomes so much easier as a shooter.
A buddy of mine, Matt Garnett, we do a shooting camp together down here in Texas. He likes to tell players after campers, after we're making some adjustments, like, you know, your shot should feel good. Like, it should feel good. I think there's like feel good coming out of your hands, out of your body, in a fluid motion. And I think that's maybe a little bit of a click moment for them. And kind of what you're talking about is, you know, oh wow, like that kid responding, oh wow, this feels different. But he probably is saying, like, this feels really good. And a shot should not feel painful, or like you're laboring to get it there. Should feel good.
For a guy like that particular kid, like, that's a kid that he's in his position because he can shoot the basketball. Little things like that can start to be the separator in terms of a 3-year career or a 15-year career, right? And that's a lot. Like, I tell players, especially like my overseas guys, like, it's a lot of commas in the bank account, man. You know what I mean? And that's what you're after to do. Like, add the commas to the bank account, and that kind of stuff can be the separating factor that puts you over the edge, that you're starting to shoot better off the dribble than anybody else is. And it's really cool to see.
Kind of a little bit of rapid fire here. Look at the rim when you shoot, or follow the ball when you shoot, or does it matter?
Look at the rim all the way up until that ball leaves the hand. But if you can lock in on the rim the whole time, I tell players to lock in on the rim. Growing up, like, I found the rim, and then I just, to this day, I just watch it. I watch it after the fact.
I'm kind of blown away by the guys that can shoot and then their eyes can find that target. But you see some of the best shooters do that.
Yeah.
Slow motion, they do. So I've stopped telling guys to stop doing it, but I'm kind of with you.
Eyes to the rim as soon as possible. Locate your target, let it go, and then I don't go crazy over it after. But
a kid's thumb and offhand interference is, especially early on, I see that being a big issue with players not having maybe their hand underneath or all the. How do you correct thumbing it with a player? There's things like the shooting strap. A guy named Jay Wolf. Really love the way he teaches it, and I understand. It's not like one of those big pads or something like that. And then, or you put a quarter or a paper clip in between your thumb and your guide hand. How do you keep them from thumbing it?
Yeah, I don't use anything. Everything that we do, first, we'll use one hand shooting to start in terms of how the ball moves, and it's not set the ball high and go. It's actually about kind of relearning how that ball needs to move up our body. So ball will start by the waist and then super connected, putting the shooting elbow behind you. And then we'll just concentrate on just sliding this ball up this right side. They'll start to get a good flow in terms of understanding how that ball needs to move, but it also forces the correct sequencing. No one's going to shoot a one-hand shot with their body coming up too early. And then what I do is I just introduce the guide hand in a way that's going to consistently touch the basketball, but we're still shooting one-hand shots. But we're just starting to get used to what it's like to have pressure there. And what tends to happen is I go through a pretty much like a 4-part series of these slides in which there's more and more pressure being added as we're shooting this one-hand shot, to the point where you kind of trick a player into a slide at the bottom with the guide hand that then turns into a normal shot. And it starts to just inch them to understanding where that shooting hand has to be. And then we're able to now relieve pressure from the guide hand, which long-term becomes an extremely beneficial thing, because whether you're a bad shooter learning or a really, really good shooter, the more you can start to learn to eliminate guide hand pressure means you can now get pickups in various situations and still get through that shot. Because once the shooting hand is on the ball, that's it. We're done. Like, that shooting hand's not going to move. The guide hand's going to have to. So that's kind of the way I go. It's all about the relieving of pressure, getting our shoulders to work together. That's a big thing too, in terms of the symmetrical aspect of things. Shoulders, elbows, a lot of it, I want it to synchronize as much as possible and just let the body work how it's intended to work.
Me and Gannon Baker are 10 toes guys. Well, at least I saw a video that old video that he said 10 toes. It's just how comfortable for me. There's the turn. Where are you with how your feet should be planted when you shoot?
It's all predicated by what type of shooter you are in terms of the shot line. So if your shot line is somebody, if I'm right-handed and my shot line is very right side dominant, I'm all for the 10 toes. But if I'm somebody that really likes bringing that ball up a bit more middle, and where I find, which I am, there's going to be a slight tilt there and bring that shoulder to the side. And then it's kind of like what you said earlier in terms of almost like throwing that dart. So it's largely predicated on, is that guy really comfortable on the right side, or is he more comfortable bringing the ball up middle? And that's where we start to work for. And I see both all of the time. Right. So I don't completely, commit myself to just one. I'm going to watch what a player does and how they move the basketball, and then we'll talk about it. But toes always point in the same direction. That's my only thing, whether it's 10 toes to the rim or 10 toes. But I see it. Like, you'll see it. Like people's feet will be pointed out. So that's my big thing.
You're right. You kind of nailed it. Like, all of these, the trick answer to all of these scenarios is both, or it's about the player and their anatomy, what's comfortable for them. Last one, even though it's probably the same, ball on the finger pads only, not touching the heel of your hand, or ball touching the heel. What are your thoughts?
Can I tell you where I think this whole argument comes from?
Yes.
All right. So everybody has been to so how old are you?
40.
Okay. So I'm 35. So we're not that far off. Right. So at basketball camp, when you went as a kid, right? Right. Exactly. So they would come in there and they would say, this is no fault to, I think this was actually, in my opinion, a genius thing to do. But this is why I think that the argument started. You need a way to show kids, right, that we don't want the ball just in the palm, right? Because if you're showing the kids that, and you just put the ball just in the palm and it's not even touching the fingers, and then they wiggle it around, right? Like, oh, we have no control that way. And they say, well, if I just put the ball on my fingertips and I have all this space, well, now I have no control that way. And you try to find that happy medium, which then turned into that small little gap when a coach
put your finger there and see how I can see.
which visually for a kid actually makes tons of sense. But everybody's hand, like, the ball's always going to touch the palm. Like, I unless you're really concentrated on not, that ball's always going to touch the palm. That doesn't mean you're a palm shooter. Like, to me, the only way you'd be a palm shooter is if you shot like a shot put.
Yeah, that's right.
That ball's always going to roll off your fingers, and you're going to try to control with your finger pad. So I think that's where that whole thing is stemmed from. I've thought way too much about it, but because it always comes, like, everybody likes to argue about it. I'm like, what are we arguing? Like, I think that there's so many more important parts of shooting that we should be talking about. Like, it's going to maybe touch a bit of the palm.
Such a minor issue, guys. Let's let that one go.
It's social media fodder at this point. It's just like,
Micah Lancaster's one of my favorite follows also, and we do a lot of the I'm Possible training here at Faith. He is every month or two, he's good for a video that comes out that just kind of blasts some of those old traditions or things that we've always thought, and he brings this other side to it that it just kind of gets me thinking.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to think that way, right? You have to challenge everything anyway. That's what it is.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.